Welcome. We have an amazing guest joining us today, and I'm going to introduce him in just a minute. But first, we want to give you a word from our sponsors. The Pressing the Limits podcast is brought to you by ZionMissionaryChurch.net. And this is where you can listen and watch messages, you can share prayer requests, or even find out how to attend drive-in church. And also by NeuroPowerSource.com. Now, these are resources for your mind, for your body, and your spirit. And there's discount codes for all the equipment and biohacking gear that I use. There's all kinds of tools and resources to help you along your journey. So let me introduce you to our guest today. Fairfax Hackley has spent a lifetime in the field of fitness. He's an award-winning master trainer with over 40 years in the fitness business. He has appeared in over 400 radio segments and 40 television appearances. He's appeared in the Washingtonian Magazine, USA Today, the Washington Post, Muscle and Fitness Magazine, Flex, as well as many other media publications. He has worked with elite athletes, U.S. Marshals, and many celebrities. Hackley spent more than 20 years in bodybuilding, winning the International Federation of Bodybuilding and Fitness Silver and Gold Awards for excellence in administration. He has won 12 class titles in the sport, and he later served as judge and as director of the Mr. America contest. For 32 years, he's been director to the Arnold Sports Festival. He is the chairman of the arm wrestling at the Arnold. He has put on the MMA workshop at the Arnold for 21 years, which is a literal who's who in the field with guys like Dana White, Randy Couture, and many others. In 2017, Fairfax was awarded the Dwight David Eisenhower Lifetime Achievement Award in Fitness by the United States Sports Academy. He currently serves as the Senior Vice President of the International Sports Hall of Fame. He is a Dartmouth College alumnus, and he's also a second-degree black belt in judo. Welcome to the show, the incredible Fairfax Hackley. It's great to have you on the show, my friend.
It's so great to be with you and talk to you and share with you. This is an honor and a privilege and a blessing.
And we're so excited and got some great questions because you have done it all. And so we're going to kind of be delving in everything from bodybuilding to you name it today. So let's get it kicked off right here. How did you get your start in bodybuilding?
Well, when you sent me that question, I had to really ponder it and really think really hard. My first inspiration, believe it or not, came from Johnny Weissmuller and watching Tarzan on TV as a kid. And I knew that I wanted to be built like that guy and swim like that guy. And I actually taught myself how to swim in a public swimming pool, which was really difficult. And my mom and dad didn't know. My mother's definitely afraid of water. My dad was a good swimmer, but I was self-taught in the pool. And they finally realized this kid doesn't know how to swim, but I taught myself how to swim. Later on, probably I was anywhere from 6 to 8 years old, I happened to see Steve Reeves in Hercules. I said, that's it. I want to be a bodybuilder. I want to be Hercules. And I turned myself into Hackules. I said, I have to do something totally, crazy and unique. And later on, not only did I was inspired by Steve Reeves, but believe it or not, I have a great story about him. And he won the Mr. America in 1947. I was born in 1953, the year Bill Pearl won the Mr. America. Not only did I get to meet both gentlemen, but I got to honor both of them at the Mr. America while I was their director. And that was probably one of the most inspirational moments that I ever had in the sport. I mean, there were many, but to finally meet Steve Reeves was like it for me. And later on, I met Jack LaLanne, and I wanted to be the Hack LaLanne of the fitness business. And so I was fortunate to also be able to induct Jack LaLanne into the International Sports Hall of Fame posthumously. through his wife, LaLanne. Unfortunately, he had passed away. But I was very, also fortunate to be able to induct Arnold Schwarzenegger and Franco Columbu, Ronnie Coleman, and some others.
That's awesome. And, kind of getting off topic here with this a little bit, but what's amazing is the guys that you're mentioning, what was so interesting, especially like Steve Reeves and Bill Pearl. I used to write for Milo Strength Magazine. And one of the interesting things is a lot of the early bodybuilders weren't just athletic, but they were also strong. You think about Bill Pearl's strength, Steve Reeves' strength. These guys weren't just building their bodies, but they built strength too. I think that they could, rival power lifters of their day and the things and the athletic achievements that you saw there. What did you think about the strength of the early bodybuilders?
Well, you remember, and that's a really good point that you brought up. The early bodybuilders were real athletes. In other words, it just wasn't all, show. There was some go. Many of them did hand balancing, yes, calisthenics, backflips, wrestling, boxing, you name it. So they were very multifaceted and not just interested in building muscle for show. Having the muscle was basically a byproduct of all the training. But these guys were just amazing. I mean, they could climb ropes at high speeds. They could do, hundreds and hundreds of dips, pull-ups. Most of them, would go out and run and jog. They were healthy. They sat out in the sun. They were swimmers. They were walkers, all types of things. So, the early bodybuilders actually, when we stop and think about it, many of us have actually devolved in fitness. We don't do all the things that our predecessors once did. And I think that is something that we've, this now functional fitness movement and some of the other things that have taken hold, CrossFit, are really trying to start to bring back some of the things that we used to do, some of these training modalities that we realize, hey, this made us overall better athletes and better humans.
Yeah, the early bodybuilders, it's amazing if you go back and you can look at a lot of those pictures of the hand balancing feats. It would rival anything you see today in cheerleading or anything else. I mean, it was just incredible how they were all around athletes. They literally were the first we call CrossFitters because many of them were also great Olympic lifters as well.
Exactly. And I had heard a story about Eugene Sandow doing a backflip over a chair holding two 45-pound dumbbells.
It's amazing.
A backflip.
And I challenge anybody to do that today. I said we've kind of lost so much of who we were. And like you said, I think now we're just starting to head back in that direction. There's a movement that way. And it's great to see it.
Yes, we really need to focus on power and strength and overall body endurance as opposed to, showing muscles. We've gotten into this six-pack mentality, or it is not a tumor, it is a big muscle, and it is a mountain.
Absolutely.
And we've forgotten about the things that we were so important, back in the day, that we build real muscle that lasted.
I love it. That's great. And you are committed, not just then, but now we'll talk about that. You've just had such longevity as far as the fitness world goes. But what kind of commitment did it take to compete in the sport of bodybuilding? What was the price that you had to pay for that?
Well, remember, it was a lot different when I was competing as a youngster and then later on in life, primarily because I didn't have the knowledge of the drugs. I went out and trained and I sweated and I lifted and did all the things, slept right, took my little liver, capsules or tablets, drank my milk, and then went out and did the best I could on the stage. And then suddenly with the advent of, drug usage, I was just blown away because guys that I had been beating, all of a sudden I was like, whoa, what happened here? And that's what led me to lead bodybuilding. and eventually become an administrator and say that, we really need to get a handle on this drug use. And when I took over the Mr. America for 2 years, it was the first time ever that Mr. America was drug tested. And I wanted to, change the perception of the sport. We had also lost, when I'm still with the IFBB, before I left for 7 years and came back, we had lost a number of bodybuilders due to diuretics. And was very much influenced by that, very saddened. Many people will remember in 1994, I personally helped save Paul Dillette's life on the stage at the Arnold when he was cramping up from 3 or 4 different diuretics in his body. And my quick thinking ushered him off the stage, and it saved his life. And so earlier, we lost Mohammed Benaziza to diuretics. This whole practice of sitting in the sauna and trying to get super dry and super ripped really started leading to a whole host of problems. And then when insulin and growth hormone, besides the other things that came in, it was just really, really crazy. So I was awarded the gold medal of the IFBB because I rewrote the rule book. We talked about drug testing. Ben Weider at the time was very interested in trying to get bodybuilding recognized by the Olympic Committee. He was successful, but not successful in having it become an Olympic sport, which was something that he had thought about from the time he founded the IFBB. And so, we continue with that because we still are concerned. And there's a number of issues with drug testing, with drugs in the sport. There's a cost issue involved. There's a number of things.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you were there to step in, before tragedy struck. But it is tragic to see how many guys have been lost over the years to drugs. And one of the things I thought was interesting, you're talking about the liver tabs. So you're probably like me. You remember the old days of the Weider liver tabs? I still use the animal to this day. The
listen,
animal pack.
I go back to Bob Hoffman.
Yeah.
Liver tablets that I took in high school and college. And you're talking about some of the worst gas in the history of the planet. I think that I was probably the early responsible for climate change because those things were just like, oh my goodness. And then we had the protein powder and the protein tablets that would just taste like chalk. Yeah. Later on, we went to the milk protein. Then we went to the gelatin, which I learned from Steve Reeves. And later on, I discovered it was ground up animal oils, and I said, I'm not going to have that anymore. But, it's interesting how back then we really didn't really know a lot about nutrition. Mm-hmm. And I remember Paul Anderson, I don't know if you remember the Warren blender, the all stainless steel blender, and Paul would get animal parts like heart and brain, and he would put it into a blender and add water and blend it up and drink it. It only took one time for that. It's like, nah, that's not for me either. But I wanted to be strong like Paul Anderson, but, it was just one of those things that actually changed my mind. And I was very fortunate, again, to understand and appreciate what these guys were going through and trying to get an edge in their lifting and in their development.
Yeah, when I was younger, I used to take the glandular blend of those tablets, and you looked what was inside of that. It was pretty crazy. I still love the beef liver tabs. I still take those on occasion. But yeah, it's amazing how many things
they're coming.
changed.
Believe it or not, they're coming back because a lot of people, this interest in the carnivore diet, this interest in, trying to eat nose to tail is very difficult. So people are looking at the benefit of, these organ meats and the efficacy and what they can do for their health. And I think that more and more people will begin to look in that as a source of, protein and health, but also balance that, obviously, with more plant-based as opposed to totally all animal. But it all depends on your goals and what you're really interested in trying to accomplish. And, the jury's still out on, as far as I'm concerned, what constitutes the perfect diet. Everyone's different. We all have bioavailability, our different, mindsets and the things that individuality affect, our sleep and other things. And that as being a biohacker. So it all depends on what your goals are and what you want to accomplish.
Absolutely. Anything else on how bodybuilding as a sport has kind of evolved over the years? I mean, you literally have seen and done it all. Any things that you see also kind of evolving in that sport?
Well, I think the biggest thing was back in the day, it suddenly became a lifestyle. There were many people who just went to the gym to lift. There were many guys who became, the T-shirt bodybuilders, the guys who, you never see their legs, or never train their legs, but they had huge arms and a huge chest. And then I think that when more supplements and other companies started building equipment, it became more accepted. And I think that the change over was with the film Pumping Iron and Arnold. That was probably one of the biggest influences, along with the Jack LaLanne show, and his physique and functionality. And there were a lot of people that really wanted to look and feel like Jack LaLanne. I was one of them. And so when I met Jack LaLanne for the first time in 1990 at the Great American Workout under Arnold Schwarzenegger and President George Bush, that was truly, truly an honor. I mean, it was like a lifetime dream.
Absolutely. Well, you are an award-winning master trainer, and like I said, you've had over 40 years in the fitness business. You've seen it all. What are some of the training fads that came and went, and what are some of the key training principles that you believe have stood the test of time?
That has got to be one of the funniest questions ever. Okay? I tried to convince my mother that the hula hoop was the best thing in the world for her abdominals and her hips and her glutes. Didn't work.
I get it.
I think that we ended up rolling the hula hoops downhill, having a little pencil and trying to work the hula hoop, but that was something that definitely failed. I know that one of the fads was one set to failure, with, that Arthur Jones talked about. The old sauna suits from 1966 that we all wanted to sweat and lose weight. I actually used those in preparation for bodybuilding shows to try to get the water out. Little did I know that I was actually deflating my muscles. The Universal Gym back in the day, I think probably every health club or every health spa had at least one Universal Gym. The nutless equipment. I was a big fan of the ab machine and the curl machine and the tricep and neck machines, but I actually got an opportunity to go down to DeLand, Florida, and train with Arthur Jones, and probably that was one of the toughest, worst experiences ever.
I bet.
Ever.
I bet.
Yeah, I mean, John, you have no idea. Arthur Jones, I said, well, I wanted to build up my biceps. And, Arthur was a real character. And matter of fact, the early part of my life, I wanted to be a herpetologist, which is basically the study of reptiles and amphibians. And many people may or may not know that Arthur was a big collector of rare reptiles. I mean, he had crocodiles, he had pythons, he had cobras, rattlesnakes, and he would breed them. And that was something that he was amazed that I was so interested in. So I said, I wanted to build my biceps. And he said, okay, I'm going to take you through a bicep training routine. And afterwards, he reached into his pocket and he pulled out 3 $100 bills. Now you have to understand, in early 70s, that was a huge deal. And he said, Fairfax, you can hold on to these bills. You can keep them. I made 3 attempts. After 4 minutes, I couldn't close my hands.
Wow.
And trust me, it was like a leaf, or a little bubble falling, And I'm trying to catch these $100 bills. I could not hold on to them. I was like, wow. And this was the time when, Arthur was working with Casey Weider, who became Mr. America.
Yep.
Mensa Brothers, Boyer Coe for a little while, Sergio Oliva. Those guys were like just phenomenal. But that was an experience that I will never, ever forget.
So
it was phenomenal.
The Reptile King turned you into some bicep pythons, huh?
Well, do you happen to know a snake doctor?
No, I don't. I do not.
Because my pythons are sick.
I love it. So,
my pythons are sick, bro.
I love it.
And then, I'd have to look at things like the 20-minute workout, if you remember, gravity boots,
yep.
Wearing the ankle weights, the little copper in the soles of your sneakers, the little shake weight, which we don't even talk about.
Well, do you remember
the Thigh Master?
Yeah.
And, a little bit of the peripheral hard action, which was big probably back in the late 60s, early 70s, and a lot of people didn't really understand it. But that was really the predecessor to high-intensity training.
Yep, to hit, for sure.
And, and later on, Arthur and Mike Mensa picked up the battle for that. And I got to spend some time with Mike Mensa. That was also something that was very unique long before he, I guess, went to another realm. But I've got so many stories. We can be talking all day here.
Yeah. I still have a pair of iron boots. That's what I was going to ask you about. Do you remember the iron boots?
Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
And that was primarily to train your hamstrings. Mm-hmm. And we, when I did martial arts, we would strap them on and do a little bit for our leg training. But in judo, we didn't really do any kicks. So everything was throws and grappling and, leg locks and arm bars and wrist locks and things like that. But later on, when I did a little taekwondo, those boots came into play. But we realized that they weren't really that effective.
So what are some?
And if you remember, the original leg curl machines were like flat tables, and before they tried to get the arch out of the back, so that's when the bent benches came into play with the leg curl machines. But I remember, using the tabletop, and my back would always hurt, and my hamstrings didn't get a really good workout. Yep. And that ended up being the predecessor to the hyper extension machine, by which Louis Simmons made popular.
Yeah, the reverse hyper, that was a game changer. But, you're talking about some of the roots there, for sure.
Yep.
What are some of the things that you think are going to stand the test of time, things that you still put into practice today?
I think that we need to begin to focus again on health and wellness. I think that that's where fitness is gone. We've come kind of full cycle. The industry is changing. The Mr. Olympia, the Arnold, more and more people, this whole thing of biohacking, it's fine to look a certain way, but it's even better to feel even better.
Yep.
And I think people are starting to focus on that as opposed to, well, look, I'm spending thousands of dollars a year on these supplements, and the efficacy is not proven. What really works? I'm not benefiting from this. We need to look at things like the amount of sleep that we're getting, the things that we ingest, our hydration. For instance, I've always known about hydration when I ran track in high school, eating the right foods, the amount of protein to take. Back in my bodybuilding days, I was eating way too much protein, way, way, way too. And there's no way that I could assimilate all the things, between the eggs and the beef and the chicken and the tuna fish and, the salmon. Very low vegetables, very few carbs. The carbs were either baked potatoes or rice. I mean, that was the lifestyle. And suddenly I wasn't always feeling well. I didn't have that brain clarity. So I think that we're getting back more and more to what constitutes real health and wellness. And I think that that's going to, make the difference. I think we're also looking at a balance between the importance of what weight training can and cannot do for us. I think the fact that I love that women have gotten involved in weightlifting and we've gotten away from the myths and the fallacies surrounding weight training, which I think is awesome. I think that people are beginning to look at certain aspects of yoga and the pranayama and the breath work, which I think is huge. I think it's undervalued and underappreciated. And I think that, people are beginning to move more outside and get away from just being out inside all day long and sitting, of course. So the more mobile we could be, the better we can be.
Yeah, you hit on some key things there too, and especially it's interesting that people are willing to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on supplements, and yet when you try to introduce them to new concepts like photobiomodulation or pulsed electromagnetic field therapy or some of these things, people aren't really, willing sometimes to invest the money, not understanding that these things are supplements that can actually change your life by getting, supplementing light into your life, by supplementing, magnetism, electricity, some of these key things. What do you think about that?
Well, I think the biohacking era is here to stay. I'm really happy that I'm a part of that. You're a part of it. If you remember, I brought the V-Light people to the Arnold several years ago and introduced them to you. And we've been using that, in our training ever since. I like the fact that people are beginning to look at alternative methods of health and wellness. Obviously, the best source of vitamin D is sunlight and sunshine and, light therapy. We're looking at things about how to improve our water and hydration. We're really evaluating, revisiting even the use of salt, the right kind of salt, for instance.
Yep.
My only concern with the area of biohacking is the fact that it's somewhat elitist. And you need to have money to be able to do it. So, with some of these different devices and the other things, it's not cheap, as you well know. I mean, you can spend thousands and convince people, but again, one convinced against their will be of the same opinion still.
Yep.
So we need to be able to say to them, look, listen, cold therapy is something that you can do. Filtering your shower water is something that you can do. Filtering your cooking water is something that you can do. Eating more organic, getting the proper amount of sleep, fixing your circadian rhythms, all of these different things will play into long-term, health and wellness. And, but you have to stop and think what's going on right now. Too many people have inflammation and compromised immune systems. Why? And I think, you and I both know the answer to that question.
Yep. And it's so interesting, people, don't understand that the sun is free. Taking a cold shower is pretty cheap. You can make some ice, take an ice bath. I always talk about, I use the poor man's cryotherapy. I've got a bunch of ice packs that I put all over my body. These are just simple things that people can do to get started. But the difference long-term is incredible. You've heard me talk about even doing carbon dioxide therapy with a paper bag. These things are cheap things, but once you start to see the differences, cost doesn't have to be, the only thing. You can start out small and let it grow.
And I totally agree with you there, because if you can show alternative methods for being able to do the same thing, I think that more and more people will say, oh, that's interesting. Let me try it. So what can you actually do to make them believers? And if you simplify it, keep it simple and keep it basic and have them at least try it out, then they're more likely to be able eventually to graduate and say, okay, I'd like to be able to get this, this, and this, and take a step up and make an investment in this for long term. But, as we said, there's a lot of cheap, inexpensive ways in which to achieve the same thing, but a lot of people don't know. So we need to get that information out to them.
Absolutely. Now, you spent 32 years as a director to the Arnold Sports Festival. You worked very closely and do still work very closely with Arnold Schwarzenegger. As somebody who's been there from the very beginning, how has the Arnold Sports Festival changed?
I get answered that question all the time, and I can't believe sometimes that I've been involved for 32 years. I mean, it's been such a journey. But when we started out the first year, I remember having a meeting with Jim Lorimer, Ben Weider, a couple other people, and we sat down, and Arnold said, he'd like to have a competition named after himself. And I had been a part of Mr. Olympia in Columbus, Ohio in 1986, which I thought was incredible. And also, I met Jim Lorimer back in 1980 when they had the World Bodybuilding Championships in Columbus. So when we got together and said, okay, we're going to do the Arnold, it was called the Arnold Classic. And I remember in 1988, I was a roommate for a little while on the European tour of Rich Gaspari. And Rich had taken 4 out of the 7 European Grand Prix. He beat Lee Labrada. And I talked him into wanting to, compete. And he says, oh, I'm really tired. I said, you really need to do the Arnold. You could win the first one. And when I talked him into it and he won, 25 years later, he won the Lifetime Achievement Award for the Arnold. And that's something that, had he not done that, would have been a whole different story. But we've gone from being a bodybuilding only competition to a multi-sport international event with over 200,000 attendees. That's been the biggest difference. The other game changer has been our expo, where our original expo, John, was we had a table set up at the bottom of Vets Memorial. And it sold white T-shirts with Arnold's double bicep image on it and World Gym sweatshirts. We didn't sell them out.
Wow.
Didn't sell them out.
Wow.
And we probably had 30 on 2 six-foot tables, and we didn't sell them out. And I think it was because it was down in the basement next to the restrooms. And no one knew it was down there, and they went unsold. Eventually, I think that if you could come up with one of those original first T-shirts, probably worth $2,000-$3,000.
Oh man, I can't imagine if you had that. I mean, that would be epic. Very cool.
And we had the old World Gym logo with the gorilla bending the bar.
Mm-hmm.
And they were the blue sweatshirts. And I remember, Joe Gold was, a part of it. We had so many people come out to the first year. And eventually that just grew and grew. And then when we added the expo, we added some other events, the Miss International and some of the other stuff that came along, then it really became a game changer.
Yep.
And that's been the difference. And the expo was the thing that set it apart. And other events like the Mr. Olympia and Europa Games and you had the FIBO that began to copy that example and expand their not only their business, but their attendance and awareness of fitness and supplementation.
Yeah, this will date me a little bit, but I remember the old World Gym and the Gold's Gym too, but the old sweatshirts that were cut off. You remember those?
I probably had at least 5 of them.
Me too. That was the thing, man. The cut off sweatshirts.
I think the craziest thing we did, and probably the stupidest, was to have had those sweatshirts and cut the collars off and cut the sleeves.
Yep.
Would I give anything to? So I had a World Gym sweatshirt that someone told me belonged to Dave Draper.
Wow.
And I probably had that for 15 years, and then my Neapolitan Mastiff went into my closet, and that's the only thing he ate.
Man. Dogs. What can you do?
Yep, dogs.
What can you do? I mean, dogs.
I'll be doggone.
Well, how did the MMA workshop get started?
Well, having a background in martial arts, back when, so believe it or not, one of my first senseis was Jim Bregman, who took third in the Tokyo Olympics in '64.
Okay.
But also Ben Campbell, Nighthorse Campbell, who became a senator. And I studied judo in New York City, the American Buddhist Academy. Did for a number of years, went to Camp Bushido in West Virginia. And then the first event of the Ultimate Fighting Championship, watched it, on TV, and I said, I'm sold. And actually, that original sweatshirt, I got one of the first 100 of those, if you remember what that logo looked like.
Yep.
That was the second sweatshirt that my dog ate.
Oh, my goodness. Dogs.
I was like, dude, seriously?
We love them.
And I was telling Hoist Gracie last year about, having that sweatshirt. He went, wow. And I said, yes. And my dog ate it.
Oh, my goodness.
Ate it. Big slobber. And I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. So going back to your question, in 1999, I put together the first MMA workshop for the Arnold weekend. And in that year, I had Frank Shamrock, I had Eric Lee, I had Cynthia Rothrock, I had Pavel, I had Matt Fury, and I had Billy Blanks.
Taibo.
We had the largest Taibo class. We had 1,200 people take that Taibo class.
That's awesome.
Billy headlined it. Was at the Adams Mark Hotel. And we charged $15 for the workshop. And John, it was packed. People were doing Taibo in the doorway, out in the hallway, on top of chairs. And Billy came out and was so thankful. He had tears in his eyes. He said, Fairfax, I didn't know it was going to be like this. He said, this was phenomenal. So eventually I went on and started promoting it every year. And, I've had everyone, like I said, from, Randy Couture, Dana White has taken part. I've had Ken Shamrock, Bill Goldberg, so many other different people that, Pavel was a part of it, as I said, for years. And right before he reintroduced kettlebells, I won't say he introduced. But I was introduced to, kettlebells back in the 60s.
Yep.
But it really kind of fell out of favor. And at Leo Stern's gym, the original, kettlebells. And then eventually it just grew and grew and grew, became a meet and greet, bringing in different people. And then probably the biggest thing that happened was UFC 68. And I had talk Randy into giving a seminar workshop for me. And right before that, I'd gone out to Vegas for the Mr. USA Bodybuilding Championships because I had a guy in the show. And I said to Jim Lorimer, I said, you know, I'd like to go out and talk to the UFC about possibly coming to the Arnold weekend and being a part of it. No one gave me a chance to say, you're not going to be able to talk to them. They're not going to come. And so Randy made the arrangements in the meeting. John, after 18 minutes, they said, Fairfax, we're there. No
awesome.
PowerPoint, a piece of paper and a pen. I blew them out of the water. Blew them out of the water. They said, we're there. I said, really? They said, yes. We want to come to Columbus next week. I said, I'm going to be on vacation. But you know that feeling when you want to run out the door and just scream?
Yep.
That's the feeling that I had, that I just had accomplished this. And Dana said, no, Fairfax, we're going to do it for 3 years. What? Yeah, on a handshake. Wow. So the thing that prevented me from going outside and screaming out loud was the fact that Dana had authorized a driver to drive me back to my hotel.
Man.
But the minute I got back to the hotel, I went into the silent laugh. You know, that where you're laughing and you're just making facial things and bending over and giving yourself high fives and slapping your hand and doing all kinds of things. Then I made the phone call and they were all stunned. They were like, no way. So a couple of weeks, we go 8 weeks out from the competition. I'd already helped to arrange for the things at Nationwide Arena. You know, we did a venue check and et cetera, et cetera. And then I get a call from Randy. He said, dude, I can't do your workshop. I said, what do you mean you can't do my workshop? He said, well, I can't tell you. I said, what do you mean you can't tell me? I said, you know, we've been friends forever. What are you doing? He said, well, you need to tune in to Spike TV at midnight. I said, I'm not tuning in to Spike TV. Tell me what's going on. And he said, I'm coming out of retirement to fight for the heavyweight championship against Tim Sylvia at that event. Now, if you thought I was excited the first time around, you should have seen me the second time around, once that announcement. You know, he made that announcement. I said, you are kidding me again. We go to UFC 68. It sold out, 19,049 people. I was in the locker room with Randy. I get to walk him to the octagon. If you see the video, you'll see me trailing behind him. I'm the last person that he hugs before he steps into the cage. I go sit in the first seat, and for 5 rounds, he kicked that butt. I mean, no one sat down for 25 minutes. Nobody. Well, it was a half hour because, you know, minute between.
Yep.
For half an hour straight. When the clap came for the end of the fight, I was so excited. I ran around the whole octagon, jumped up on the platform, jumped up on the cage, and got stuck.
That's awesome.
I literally was stuck in an X, okay, between my cowboy boots and my belt buckle, and I couldn't get down. And Randy handed me his mouthpiece, which I put in my pocket, and I was trying to get down. The UFC security was, get Fairfax down, get Fairfax down. So they helped me down, and of course, that was just phenomenal. It was probably one of the best moments that I can remember in martial arts and MMA history. Biggest upset. There was no way that Randy was going to win that fight. And the very next day, we go into the expo. There's 4,000 people waiting to see him. 4,000 people. 3 hours. And we still couldn't see every. They literally followed him to the airport, jumped in cars and cabs, and followed us to the airport. It was crazy.
I love it.
And up until 8 years ago, well, no, not 8 years, up until 4 years ago, that was the number one attended event in America, United States. The highest attended. it is still holds the record at Nationwide Arena for the most revenue generated. It beat the Rolling Stones. It beat other acts that had appeared there. Everything through the roof.
Amazing.
It was just one of those. It was just one of those things that you just say, "Wow!" You helped put that together. And then, over the years, we had 3 straight years of the UFC. Then I had the World Extreme Cage Fighting. Mm-hmm. Then I had Strike Force, and the Strike Force event was where Ronda Rousey fought Miesha Tate for the championship. Later on that night, unbeknownst to us, Scott Coker had sold Strike Force to the UFC. And, the rest is history with that whole thing. And then eventually I got to induct Ronda Rousey.
Yep. Amazing. And that was an amazing time too. You have done it all. I mean, you're the Arnold arm wrestling chairman. I get to watch you, referee those matches. You've trained and worked with all kinds of celebrities, athletes, VIPs. Who are some of the people that you have enjoyed working or training with the most, and why?
I would say number one, if you're familiar with Jack Valenti was the president of the Motion Picture Association for over 40 years. And I trained Jack for 20 years. And Jack eventually became my best man at my wedding.
Wow.
And, the whole rating system, and he was the press secretary for Lyndon Johnson, back in the day. And, he was very excited that I knew Arnold, and through Jack, I met Sergeant Shriver and Eunice and got involved with the Special Olympics. And then I trained both, Sarge and Eunice for 2 years. I worked with Madonna for a hot minute before her Virgin tour, when she was stationed here in Washington at the Watergate Hotel. I worked with Anthony Quinn before his last run as Zorba the Greek. He was a hoot. I loved him. It was great. I worked with Patty LaPone, who did Evita. Mm-hmm. The U.S. Marshals for 6 years, which I really enjoyed that, because that changed lives and made those guys a lot fitter. And we went with a twice yearly fitness testing, because, many of the marshals, all they did was worked in the courtrooms, and they would sit for hours on end or guard shack duty. So we opened up some things with the training to be able to, mobility and move and strength. And then eventually Muscle and Fitness did an article about me training marshals. I would probably say then the Great American Workout, when Arnold was president of the President's Council on Physical Fitness and Sport. That was a lot of fun. We did that for a couple of years. The Olympia, I would say was a lot of fun. Staying with Ronnie Coleman for a weekend was a lot of fun. Training with him, which was crazy.
That was insane.
That was absolutely insane. The little Metro gym where he trained had a wood platform that half the wood was missing on the floor. The walls were stained with blood and mucus, because the guys would just turn around and just, blast it onto the walls. It was crazy. But when you talk about hardcore training, that was it. That was the epitome of hardcore training. I haven't trained that hard since I did some work with Steve Mahalik back in the day at his Mr. America gym on Long Island. And, he did the intensity and insanity routine with 50 to 100 sets per body part.
Amazing stuff. I mean, I said you've done it all. For those who might not know, what is the International Sports Hall of Fame, And how did it feel? I was so excited to get to watch this with you when you got the promotion. How did it feel when you were promoted to the vice president, the senior vice president of the International Sports Hall of Fame?
Well, I first have to thank my longtime friend, Dr. Bob Goldman, who founded the Hall of Fame. And he actually pays for that out of his own money, so there's no sponsorship. So being involved in that first year was, pretty incredible. And that comes from, our 30-year friendship from bodybuilding and when we formed that. And the first year was kind of, we kind of went along. And then the more involved I got, I said, well, we have to take this to the next level. We have to be more organized. We have to have a mission statement. We have to have a logo and some other things, website. So eventually, over the past 8 years, we've been able to bring that up to the level. We needed to take it from just bodybuilding people, because if you remember, where you look on the website, the early years, Randy was the official first inductee, but we had we had Arnold, we had Franco, we had Corey Everson, Cynthia Rothrock. And then eventually I helped branch it out to, Jason Statham, Triple H, Evander Holyfield, Bruno Sammartino, which was another inspiration for me as a kid. I got to see him wrestle multiple times at the old Madison Square Garden. And by the way, he's the all-time headliner at Madison Square Garden with 188 sellouts.
Amazing.
188 sellouts. So to meet him, a reminder 40 years later, and Arnold had remembered that he had met him 40 years earlier, and to induct him before he passed away was, another dream come true. And then meeting all these amazing people through the Hall of Fame, the past 8 years has just been, a godsend. Being promoted to the senior vice president, I won't say that was as much a shock as it was, a result of hard work.
Yep.
I always say that hard work will beat talent when talent won't work hard.
Yep.
I'm the type of person that I get stuff done. Everyone who knows me knows that I'm relentless.
Yep.
And if I have a passion for something, I'm going to put my heart and soul into it. And you guys have witnessed that firsthand through not only being having become a part of the Arnold Weekend, but also our friendship that has developed as a result of it. And seeing you guys each year is something that really, really is near and dear to me. So inviting me on this podcast was, I can't tell you, one of those also very special moments. And that comes from, giving. When you give, you get. And I got you guys' love and friendship, and I can't say enough about that.
Well, you are amazing. When I get a chance to watch you with the vice president, it was just this idea of you getting the recognition that was well-deserved. You know what I'm saying? It's finally getting recognized for all the amazing hard work, the blood. We're listening to stories about the Arnold. It's been your blood, sweat, and tears, and blood, sweat, and tears into the International Sports Hall of Fame. And, just all that you do for that. And again, guys like Dr. Bob, it's just an incredible group of people. And it's an honor, just to be able to spend time with all of you.
Well, the best part of the story is I have never, ever received a dime for my work for the Arnold. I have never, ever received a dime for my work with the International Sports Hall of Fame. I have never, ever received a dime for my work in the International Sports Hall of Fame. Why? Because, again, when you give, you get.
Yep.
I won't say that it was a vindication, it was a recognition, but, as being a leader, you have to lead by example.
Yep.
And if you don't lead by example, you won't get people to follow your lead. you've been a leader yourself with your church, with your faith, with your family, in the fitness business. We met through Mike Gillette. If you remember, Mike recommended you to me. And so our friendship blossomed from that. It's grown every year. It's gone on. But, one of the criteria that we select our inductees is that they have to be community-minded people. They have to give back to the sport, to their community. And if they don't meet that criteria, they're not even eligible for induction. We turn them down. It's fine if you have a great career, but you need to spend some time giving back. There's so many people who have prospered from their sport or these endorsements who don't give a penny back to the people who support them. That to me is just unfathomable. And so Dr. Bob and our board insists that you have to have some kind of community service and give back. If you don't, we're not interested. So, giving of myself and giving my heart and soul, I know what I've done. No one can take that away from me. But, when I turned 65 2 years ago, I said that the next 65 years of my life, all the things that I got right, I was continue to do. All the things that I got wrong, I would correct. So I plan on living to at least 130. Just so you know. I want to go to heaven, but I'm not homesick.
I just love how you lead by example and are willing to sacrifice, so much for others. You talk about the International Sports Hall of Fame, all the different things that you do, the Arnold, the people that you work with. The fact that you pour your heart and soul into it is why it's so powerful. And you're an inspiration to us all, which leads me to my last couple of questions. You've had all these honors over the years, especially receiving the United States Sports Academy's Dwight David Eisenhower Fitness Award for Lifetime Achievement. With all of that success, and I mean, we just scratched the surface on all of your success. Do you have any future goals and dreams? And then where can people go to learn more about Fairfax Hackley?
Well, that's such a loaded question. I would say that probably getting that Dwight David Eisenhower Lifetime Achievement Award was probably to date the highest award and the most prestigious that I've ever gotten. Primarily because Arnold's won that award, Bill Clinton won that award, George Bush won that award, Jack LaLanne won that award, Stallone has won that award, Greg Glassman has won that award. I mean, it's a literal who's who of fitness. And to have won that award I was just blown away. And it wasn't, I'm not a person who's, written books. I don't produce DVDs and things like that. But what happens is that I try to personally touch as many lives as possible. And I think that I've been very successful and very honored and loved as a result of it. And my integrity in the things and my humbleness that I bring is so important. I'm not worried about the accolades or the money, because if you want to get rich quick, count your blessings. I'm rich because I have friends like you. I'm rich because I have friends like Dr. Bob. I'm rich because I've had the experience of 32 years with the Arnold. I'm rich because I have the blessing of my spirituality and faith. I'm rich on so many levels that, I have to give some away. I have to give some back. And, again, success is not a reward, to be enjoyed, but a trust to be administered. And every day dues, is due for that success. So when I get up in the morning, I hit the ground running. First thing, I'm thankful for the fact that I did get up. I can see, I can hear, I can go to the bathroom without any problems. So I start my day off really well.
Yep.
You know, I'm thankful, you know, for like the little things. I'm thankful that I have a roof over my head. I'm thankful that my friends are safe and well. And then I begin to say, you know what? If you give it away, you're going to get so much more in return. And that's how I try to lead my life.
Love it. Love it. Well, we are richer people for having you in our lives. I can't say much. I can't say how much we appreciate you. And I look forward to seeing you all the time and just when we can connect. And like I said, you have been such a blessing, not just to me, but people all over the world. And we thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. You know, it's funny, but on a very personal level, and something that, you know, is near to dear to me, I have not seen my son in 15 years. I had a very ugly divorce and, you know, separation. And, you know, it didn't turn out well for him. It didn't turn out well for me. And I want to leave a legacy behind that when people like you and others who say, this is who your dad was, you missed out on life by not talking to him. And I know that maybe it will happen, maybe it won't, but you know, that's it's so near and dear to me because my dad was an only child, his dad was an only child, I'm an only child, and my son is an only child. So if I continue with something at some point, you know, maybe he'll realize it or maybe he won't. And it's not the majority of my motivation that I have, but it's also another reason why I get up and to say, you know what, this is who your father is. This is who your father was. And your father is still a human becoming. And I like that. We all are human becomings.
I love that.
Leaders are readers. Leaders are readers.
Well,
I don't let a day go by without reading something for an hour.
And that's great advice right there. And we're going to be praying for that restoration to happen. You know, I know that God works in mysterious ways. And so we're going to pray for that restoration. We'll be praying for you, brother.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it.
Well, I want to thank you.
Really.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, you know, again, as we talked about, there's so many things. Even, you know, we all have loss. Don't lose the lesson.
Yeah.
We all have loss. I'm going to say that again. Don't lose the lesson. Whether it's, you know, hardship in life, whether it's this, you know, virus that's devastating the world, you know, the sacrifices that people have made with, you know, the economy, with their lives, with their loved ones, all the different things. There's lessons here. And we need to be able to look at those lessons and how valuable those lessons are going forward. This isn't the first time in history that this has happened. You know, 9/11 was not the first time that something like that has happened. Pearl Harbor, et cetera, et cetera. We look back over our history. What we need to understand is it's never the problem, it's how you deal with it. No matter how big or small, it's never the problem, how you deal with it. You either make the situation better or you make it worse, or you just become paralyzed by it. Paralysis by analysis. So when you get up every day, you get going, there's a solution to the pollution is dilution.
You know, and with guys like you,
down, take it, put it in your mouth, swallow it, because you say, I eat hardship for breakfast. As long as I have God on my side, I can't lose.
And that's the best advice that you can have out there. You know, with guys like you, we're going to pull through this thing, you know, together. And with God on our side, you know, who can be against us? So I want to thank our guest today. We want to honor him. We're thanking Fairfax Hackley for investing in all of our listeners today. I think that if you listened today, you didn't just get entertained. You had an investment in your heart today, and I love that. I also want to thank our sponsors, ZionMissionaryChurch.net and NeuroPowerSource.com, our podcast producer, Drew Kiespert, film director, Jolynn Thomas. Be sure to rate us and subscribe to the Pressing the Limits podcast. For more ways to watch and listen to this podcast, check out the Pressing the Limits podcast site. We'll see you soon.